Our next section from the Sermon on the Mount starts in Matthew chapter 7 verse 15. And it says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits." There are a lot of directions that I want to go with this, so I think I'm gonna cut it down to two, maybe three. And the first is, beware of false prophets who come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves, right? And I think immediately for me, this imagery, it points me towards leaders in the church. This is pastors, these are elders, these are even just those people you look to in church, and they're authorities for whatever reason. And you have to be careful, because sometimes leaders know the right things to say to sound, it's what you want to hear, but inwardly, so they're dressed like sheep. It's like, oh, it's another sheep, I should go hang out with the sheep, that's going to be nice. And then it's a wolf, and you get eaten. And I think that's a danger with leaders who say what they think people want to hear. Whether it's malicious or not, they might, a lot of pastors especially, like people to like them. And it's hard to walk that line while still, because you want to build up goodwill, right? But you have to walk the line and say what actually needs to be said, rather than telling people what they want to hear, so that and then they're on the narrow or they're on the wide path that we talked about yesterday. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is just because a leader is saying all the things you want to hear doesn't necessarily mean that they have your best interests at heart, whether that is malicious or not. In reality, in my opinion, a good leader is going to challenge you. A good spiritual advisor, let's call them, as a kind of a broad category for pastors and elders and other spiritual leaders. They're going to challenge you, and they're going to say, here's a place that your life could be more in line with God's will for it. And they're going to push you on that. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then the second thing, it's just, again, in this line of Jesus kind of goes on a tear of practice what you preach, and he's speaking again and again and again against hypocrisy. And I think here's another one. You're going to recognize a tree by its fruits. If you're going to talk about Christianity and you're going to say, I follow Jesus, your life should reflect that. Your fruits, your actions, your words, your attitudes should reflect that. And hear me very clearly here. Your salvation doesn't rest on it. Okay? This is not works righteousness. You are not earning your way into heaven. But there is this reality that if you are a faithful Christian, your life is going to look like it. And if you're not, then are you really operating from that paradigm? If that makes sense. And I think in this context, with that introduction, beware false prophets, again, this is a measurement for leaders. If someone who is in a position of spiritual authority is not living according to the life that they're proclaiming, that they're leading, they need to be called on it. And that's, I pray that I have people in my ministry, and I know that I have people in my ministry who, I'm teaching these things to you, and if I was, doing things in my life that were bad fruit, that weren't living up to that, I know they would say, hey Josh, you are called to better than this. And my prayer for you today is that you have people in your life who will do the same for you. a little bit scattered, but that's our devotion for today. Brothers and sisters, go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.